Oh, what does the Humblebrag entail? So many hours of work.
5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
Welcome to We Are Duffree's Perspectives.
We have a lot of responsibility. We reach thousands and millions of people through the projects that we're doing.
We are a creative agency maximizing the positive impact on businesses, society, and our planet.
So if you currently look at all communication marketing campaigns, it's not always representing society.
Radical change needs to happen now. Otherwise, brands and companies are going to get left behind.
You know, if you're a marketing manager, if you're in a senior position, you're an opportunity maker. So how can you redistribute those opportunities in an interesting way?
Every week, founder Mitchell talks to visionaries and changemakers who are shaking up the status quo.
We create content for every living soul on this planet.
Get ready to be launched into a new perspective.
Good evening.
Hi.
Hi, Lucy. Thank you for being on our podcast and a web series. Really appreciate you having here. Can you explain to us a little bit who you are, what you do?
Yeah, sure. So my name's Lucy von Sturmer. I'm the founder of the Humblebrag, which is a impact-driven thought leadership agency. And we help brands and companies and startups and their leadership team take a more active stand on social, cultural, and environmental issues. And I'm the co-director and co-initiator of Creators for Climate, which is an initiative and a global network supporting more people to embrace their imagination and creativity to take a stand on the climate and ecological emergency.
That sounds super cool.
Yeah.
What does it entail?
So many hours of work. I have no social life anymore. Mostly brands and companies come to us. Usually they either have some awareness that they need to change their positioning, they don't know where to start, or they want to launch something, they want to make themselves more visible, particularly in the sustainability space, or they have some talents of their leadership team which they feel aren't visible enough.
As you are so much in the corner of making an impact-driven business, how do you make it sustainable? Because financially it's not always profitable.
Yeah.
There are lots of other profits that are not financially that you wouldn't get if you were not an impact-driven business.
Yeah.
But then you need to find the right balance. How do you do that?
Yeah. I think the first 2 years, there were a lot of extra hours just because of the adrenaline that I had. So that probably compensated a little bit. But I think that what's true for us is probably true for our clients and anyone in this space, which is that like every time Patagonia take an activist stance, which actually might be, in a way, sacrificing their sales, like closing their shop, so allowing people to vote, or telling people not to buy this jacket, their profits go up. So I think that it's incredibly important to walk the talk. I think that you should account for it somehow in your budget as even a marketing expense to say, we do this, but it's not a loss. It's actually so core to our mission. And if we don't do this, then who are we? We're just, like anyone else claiming to be impact-driven. So I think it's kind of not even really optional to dedicate time to doing projects that are tied to your mission that may not be super lucrative. I would say it's a little bit difficult for us because we are like a little bit picky in the clients that we take because we're still like a small boutique agency. So we're not doing these massive campaigns for KFC and offsetting it by some pro bono good work. Pretty much all the clients we work with, no, I'll rephrase that. All the clients we work with, I would stand behind 100%. That's also the why of even having my own business. So, you do have to make it work.
How long have you been living in Amsterdam?
The Netherlands, almost 9 years. In Amsterdam, 7.
Because where are you from originally?
New Zealand.
New Zealand.
Yeah.
How did you end up here?
Oh, how did I end up in the Netherlands? When I graduated from university, I was actually a news presenter and radio host, although I have never learnt to DJ.
We need to swap.
No. When I was basically finishing my master's degree. And it was a great gig, but it was also a recession way back then. And so I was kind of looking around in New Zealand for my next move, and I couldn't find it. So I thought, I'm going to take a gap year and move to Italy. So I took a gap year. I was a certified English teacher and lived in Venice, lived in Rome, and fell in love with the concept of Europe. Visa ran out. Felt like the Netherlands was probably a smart place to actually start a career. And it was. And I've kind of climbed my way up from intern to communications manager to head of comms, global PR manager at Media Monks to 3 years a business owner.
All the way back.
Sure.
News reporter, news journalist.
Yeah.
What happened there? I know you,
Yeah.
so I can see some links with things you are doing now. Pointing back to that, but for the people that don't know you, how did that happen?
So maybe a funny part of my personal story is that my mother was a very well-known actress in New Zealand. So I had New Zealand's top agent represent me from the age of like 6. I was going to auditions, kind of pushed into the acting world. Never had a talent for it. Although I did do quite a few jobs, both from like commercials to I played, do I really want to bring this back? I played a lesbian fashion designer that stole a nurse's baby on New Zealand's most watched TV series called Short and Straight. Did that for 6 weeks, which is quite a regular gig in the world of like soap operas, and obviously was studying at the time, and I was looking for ways to kind of pair studying, working in international relations and media, and then this kind of performing background.
Did you have a really open-minded upbringing, you think?
Yes. My grandparents were all very experimental in the 70s. My grandma is a lesbian. I have been aware of the fact that they had an open marriage. I know that there was drugs and you know, they were all psychiatrists and they were very intellectual and very open-minded. My parents not. I think my mother experienced as a kid some of the trauma around having parents that were very experimental. And I think that her recovery and the rest of her life, especially as a strong woman, she's an artist, she's an activist around the climate, but also many other things. I think that growing up being around that has certainly helped me find my voice. You know, I, for better or worse, have always had a ability to withstand a level of confrontation, which doesn't mean I like it, but it definitely means that I'm willing to have it if I think it's, you know, worthwhile. And I think that relates to some of the work and the conversations I do now, because you have to be a person that's willing to get uncomfortable, not for the sake of it, of course, but it's a feeling a lot of people shy away from.
Yeah.
And I think that it's necessary if you're going to change anything to be able to do that.
So what would your advice be to others that are scared and have lots of fear why they don't speak out? And
don't try and be liked by everybody. Get over it. Yeah, I think that was a huge one for me, at least. You know, if you are this person that is born, I think, to create a little bit of impact, then don't worry about pleasing everybody.
What would be a dream project for you?
Well, I feel honestly that maybe it's cliche to say I've already been doing those projects, but working with ZDHC Foundation, which is a multi-stakeholder initiative focused on sustainable chemistry for the last 3 years, has been, I wouldn't say it's a dream project because it's also really difficult, but it's been a project that's pushed me to my limits in terms of exploring the impact I can have, taking a foundation that is relatively obscure that people don't know about, or even a topic like sustainable chemistry in fashion. I've worked with the executive director to co-create the world's first book on detoxing the fashion industry. We launched the book. You know, we got him covered in Forbes magazine, curated an online panel to launch the book with like fashion influencers and Vogue, and you know, we're able to bring all of the excitement and buzz that I think that we do really well to a topic that's really important, and to elevate it and amplify it, and therefore helping their foundation have more impact. So that for me was a really, good example of the walking the talk when I talk about the impact we can have.
You're now running a boutique company. Do you think about scaling that maybe in the future? And if so, how would you do that?
Yeah, I think I've had some lessons around scaling my business. I don't want to keep it super, super boutique, so much so that I have to be myself involved in every single project, which right now it is. But I do believe in having a really small core team. So for me, scalability looks different, which is having a really small core team, an amazing network of freelancers and creatives to call on, and being able to design teams based around projects and really push this digital business through online courses. So that's exciting for me, because I do get a lot of people knocking on my door saying, like, I want a little bit of what you have. How did you do it? So, I really hope that if I can boil that down into a methodology and, at a low price point for Joe Blogs who wants to participate, that will be a way to create more scalability with individuals too.
Lucy, I think you're quite been building some communities. Can you tell us a little bit about Creators for Climate and also another community you built before that?
Yeah, so before I built Creators for Climate, I started an initiative called the Amsterdam Creative Entrepreneurs Collective, ACE Collective, which I ran for almost 2 years. Looking back, it sounds kind of lofty, actually, and I'm like, who gave me permission to start that community? But I think that was also part of it, was that I am a foreigner that's been living in the Netherlands, and particularly Amsterdam, for quite some time. And as a woman, I wanted to start my own impact-driven business. And no, I didn't want to be a Zeze payer. I wanted to be an entrepreneur. So I was looking for communities that I could join that were going to speak to me about growth and about scalability and, all of the nuts and bolts of growing a business. I was looking for that community. And at the time, I couldn't find one that spoke to me. So I would go to fuck up nights or other events that were for entrepreneurs. And to be honest, they were mostly targeted at startups in a way that was not necessarily speaking to the mission-driven community that I really felt I was looking for. And they tended to have featured just men on stage. And even just white men on stage. So I wanted to create a culture and a series of events and programming that put women and people of diverse backgrounds in the spotlight, but not make it about that. So actually keep it about entrepreneurship. So I almost created my own playground and growth zone. So that was ACE Collective. And then last year, sustainability has always been a core value and theme that I've been trying to work on within the Humblebrag. But we came across Extinction Rebellion, who was sending out a message far more radical than I'd heard, which was that, even if you're in social entrepreneurship or you're an impact maker, you're still within the system. You're probably not challenging things enough. You might be looking at tweaks to business as usual. And actually, you can have more radical change as a citizen, as an individual. Come and get arrested. Come and, just sit in the middle of traffic, piss people off, and then tell them the reason you're doing it is because there's a climate emergency. I was like, okay, there's some real action. And you know what? Part of it's making a lot of sense to me because, I myself have been at these forums and conferences with all these stakeholders talking about how we really need to shift the dial, and yet nothing's changing. So Creators for Climate was about creating an opportunity for a lot of the brands and companies and agencies in the creative community that we were working within. Creators for Climate for me has been just some amazing people that are willing to give their time and have this difficult conversation, because it's not so easy to say, well, what should people do? How do you create positive impact? So above, we were kind of trying to understand, okay, well, how you've got this amazing talent pool. I think now the community is over 700 creatives that have literally signed up to say, give us briefs around the climate emergency, and we will respond to them. So we thought, okay, we need to not take advantage of this in the sense that this cannot be free labor for positive impact loosely termed, that's not going to cut it. So what briefs do we take on? What briefs don't we take on? And how do we communicate that? So we came up with the conclusion that we take on briefs from climate activist groups, but also those with regenerative solutions, because we don't want to just focus on the problem, but also, for example, there's actually a business in hemp. So that was like closest to it was an interesting one to work within a social enterprise, but also Fossil Free Nederland, Friday Future Love, For the Love of Bees, a lot of organizations that we've been able to support, Kron van der Stad. And we've taken on, we've built a team of strategists. So I think it's about 14 volunteer strategists that are full-time, or not full-time, but every Friday they dedicate their time to this. And they all manage a brief each. And then they literally work with a community of creatives on each brief, delivering visual assets, communication strategies for these initiatives. And we did that for almost all of this year. So that's a lot of invisible work that I don't even think you probably know about because we haven't yet communicated it, which is kind of ironic because it started as a communications campaign. But that's kind of the evolution of Creators for Climate. And it's 100% non-profit, but that's why I don't have a life because I do it in the weekends and the evenings.
Yeah. What is your best advice or takeaway in changing the narrative into something positive for humanity and our planet?
What I think that companies and brands can do is identify narratives and identify actors working on narratives like civil society organizations or activists or local communities, and they can use their resources. So if you have power, platform, and influence, whether you're an individual, whether you're a company, you do have the ability to go in and amplify narratives. But I think that that's how you can change narratives, is really just about being part of a sea change of new narratives. But I equally believe that you can challenge narratives through action. And I think role modeling is really important. So that's why I'm always looking to get more women on stage. I'm always looking to get more people of color on stage, disabled people on stage. I think that through, see it, be it is the tagline. And I think that's really true.
Well, I think I totally agree with what you just shared with us. And I want to thank you for that. And I think you're leading by example by being a role model for lots of others. So I want to say thank you very much for being on. Really appreciate it.
Thanks, Mitchell.
We hope to speak soon.
Yeah, definitely. And thank you for the left of field questions. It's nice to be asked some more personal ones. So it's great.
Thanks.